Yaron, stop. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you in this fantastic event, which is the Meet PharmaTech Israel. Today, this is an event that is produced by the Israeli Embassy in France with my good friend Yaron Schrotter, and in cooperation with Digital Pharma Lab. I am Pascal Bécache, the co-founder of Digital Pharma Lab, and I'm really, really happy to welcome you today. The purpose of this main event is to introduce you to the Israeli ecosystem, and you will see we will have a fantastic program to propose to you. We will start with a very impressive conversation between Maurice Lévy. Maurice, I think there is nothing to say. You will introduce yourself, but I think it's everybody will be very happy to see you. And Yossi Vardi, and Yossi will also introduce himself, but Yossi is, let's say, the father of the startup nation. There will be also afterwards very interesting conversation with startuppers like Ayala Bliah, who is heading Moovcare, which is a very famous startups in France. It's also a co-production between France and Israel. And there will be also a lot of conversation with Moshe Bar Siman Tov, who used to be the Director General of the Health Ministry in Israel during the COVID pandemic. So he will teach us a lot of things. We will learn a lot of things. There will be also a very interesting conversation with Sigal Rosenberg. Sigal is the head of one of the biggest HMO in Israel, Kupat Cholim, Meuhedet. And then there will be a panel discussion with some of our great panelists, and we will talk about them a little bit later. But you will know a little bit better about Israeli ecosystem. For those who's here, who are here, you will also have the occasion to meet with 15 startups, about 15 startups this afternoon and tomorrow. And there will be a special one-to-one and B2B meetings so that hospitals in France and pharmaceutical company can meet with the Israeli startups. Yesterday, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, announced a big amount of money for health in France. He announced 7 billion euros for healthcare in France during the next 3 years, with especially a little bit, part of it, 600 million for health tech. So it means that during the next year, health tech will be a star, a rising star in the environment, and it will for sure change definitely our view on our health and how we can prevent and we can cure disease. We will talk about this, of course, during all the morning, but there is a good news today, except, of course, there is first the presence of all these very prestigious invitees, but there is a good news also. There will be a big change as well in the health tech in France. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce you Yaron. Yaron is from the Israeli Embassy. So Yaron, some words. What are you doing in the Israeli Embassy?
Hi, everyone. Very good to see so many people joining us this morning. Thank you, Pascal. As Pascal said, my name is Yaron Schrotter, and I am heading the economic mission of Israel to France for the last 4 years. We are sitting in Paris, and it is our privilege to represent the Israeli ecosystem of innovation in France. We essentially build platforms to bring people together from both sides. And over the last 4 years, I've been working with many of the ground groups in France, scouting for Israeli technologies, putting people to meet one with the other in a very focused way. And I'm happy to note that Israel is well known in France as a technological hub. There's a lot of curiosity with the big companies of France, and not only the big, about scouting for tech in Israel. And this is exactly what we're trying to encourage. You may know that Israeli high tech is doing tremendously well right now at this point of post-COVID, or at least we hope it's post-COVID. Just to give you a better understanding, and we are surprised ourselves by the staggering, I mean, the investments that flow into the Israeli high tech this year have already matched the entire year of 2020, which was by itself a very good year. So this is amazing. Israel, it's true that tech all over the world is booming, but Israel is booming even more so, and a lot more so. So it's leading the world in tech growth in this COVID year. Today we are all about showcasing digital health from Israel, and it's the same trend. I mean, digital health is very strong in Israel at this point. And I think you will find it really, really interesting to get exposed directly to the 15 wonderful startups that we have here today. They were particularly chosen very carefully because we thought that they match the needs of the French ecosystem. So this event is an invitation to the French healthcare, to the French health tech professionals to engage more intensively with the Israeli ecosystem. We believe there is a lot to gain for both sides. So this is it from my side. I will see you a bit later, and I leave the floor now to our wonderful host, wonderful guests, Maurice Lévy and Yossi Vardi. Pascal told you that there's no need to introduce them to you. If you don't know them, Google them. And I'm giving the floor to you, Maurice and Yossi, and thank you very much for being our guests today. It's very kind of you. Thank you.
Okay, Yossi and Maurice, you can start. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Boker Tov. Maybe the best is to have Yossi to start.
Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Let me just.
But it looks that Yossi has some connection issues, and he told us already in the meeting that we had before that he may have a connection issue. So I'm starting without further ado. So my name is Maurice Lévy. I'm the chairman of the supervisory board of Publicis Group. I have been leading the group for many years, and I have a keen interest in digital, in the startups. I have co-founded recently Vivatech, and I have also a keen interest in Israel. And as you can see in the picture behind me, it is the declaration of the state of Israel by Ben-Gurion, David Ben-Gurion. So I don't know if you are hearing me well. I don't have any comment or reaction. It looks, according to Pascal nodding, that it is working. So Israel has been and is one of the most vibrant places for creating startups. Yossi is probably much better positioned to explain why, but from a international point of view and the French one, I guess that there are many very good reasons for that. First of all, the education. Education has been key and is key. It's probably the best investment that a nation can do. And people in Israel are extremely well trained in technology and in the digital world. And on top of that, there is something which is quite extraordinary, which is this entrepreneurship spirit, which is common to a lot of Israelis. And it is also the way for them to look much broader than Israel. And internet has been the tool which has made Israel borderless. And for people who have been entrenched in a relatively small country to have suddenly all the space of the world within easy touch is something which has transformed the country and which has given rise to a lot of startups. Yossi has been one of the father of the startup nation with Shimon Peres, and through the experience that they have had in many different areas, we have seen Israeli startups being extraordinarily successful thanks to being very innovative, daring, and being able to really create some breakthrough solutions. And that is what is making Israeli startups extremely successful. I see that Yossi is back. Boker Tov.
Boker Tov, Maurice.
Shalom, shalom. Good to see you. And maybe Yossi, as you have been instrumental, not only by conceptualizing the startup nation and creating the structure, but also with the fact that you have yourself been a VC with an extraordinary success, and everyone remembers ICQ and what happened and what has created the beginning of that startup nation. Maybe you can shamelessly speak about what Israel has created and has made, what has been the reason for this extraordinary success.
Okay, first of all, Yaron asked me to turn the camera on the side, so I will start with doing it. I hope you see me okay now.
Yes, I do see you okay.
Okay. Let me start by thanking Maurice for again being here for us. It's really a pleasure to talk to all our French friends. And unfortunately, I missed one of the best shows, if not of the best show in Europe and in the world, PharmaTech. So at least we are able to use the wonders of technology and Zoom to talk among all of us. Also, I would like to thank Yaron and the government of Israel for putting this wonderful interaction together. I think we have 15 Israeli companies visiting France to discuss the opportunities and the needs after the COVID. The subject of our talk was supposed to be the world after COVID-19, but what we see is the culmination of two very important trends. One trend is the very quick development or leap forward of anything empowered by the internet, including the health sector. And I will say a few words about it. And the other thing is the many requirements and demands and opportunities to resolve things in the health space. The health sector is not going to be like it was 2 years ago anymore. And I'm not talking only on vaccination, I'm talking on many other things. You know, for ages, people spoke about telemedicine and about patient visiting the doctors from remote, and it didn't happen, but we do see now that there is a big increase of the willingness of people to go to doctors, to consult with doctors and with medical professionals via the internet. Internet pharmacies are growing all over the place, leaps and bounds. The importance of data, also, it was kind of unleashed, huge power, it's being unleashed, and with the expertise which exists in France and in Israel, I think we are going to see many great opportunities of collaboration. And Maurice and I came this morning in order to encourage you people to look into these opportunities and to see how we can increase the interaction between our two countries, between our two communities of scientists, between our two people, and how we can harness technology and innovation, entrepreneurship, and creativity to resolve some of the most pressing needs of mankind. So I will stop here, and I will ask Maurice maybe to share with us how does he see the world after COVID-19.
Okay, first of all, I'm joining you in thanking Yaron, who has done a very good job at the Israeli embassy in France. And he has also done an excellent job in promoting the Startup Nation and inviting a lot of startups to come to Paris, including at Vivatech. The world after COVID, we are not yet there. We just learned, even this morning, that there was a huge cluster which has been created by some young students in Spain, and they are all locked down in the Balearics. So it's something which is a non-ending situation as it looks, because this virus is something which has many variants, many possibilities, and including when people are vaccinated, it seems that there are still some risk. What is interesting is to look at the current situation as it is. And we have an interesting situation, because since a few months, the world, and when I'm saying the world, I'm speaking about the entire world. It's not only France or a few people in France or Europe, it is the world who has looked at Israel with different eyes and different lenses. Israel has not only made a lot of progress in terms of science and pharma and med, and as a board member of the Weizmann Institute, I know how strong and extremely productive are the researchers in the field of science and biotech in Israel. But on top of that, the country itself has shown that it could be a kind of laboratory for the entire world by vaccinating at a high speed and by solving most of the logistic issues that could happen to a country. First, when it was on tracking, on testing, on separating, and now on vaccinating. And what Israel has done is something which has put a different light on the country. And in all the countries of the world and all the TV news, press news, etc., Israel has become a reference. So when you make the combination of the way the COVID has been handled, the startups that exist, the pharma industry that already exists in Israel, even if it is relatively small, it is, compared to the size of the country, quite significant and probably much better than in many industrial countries. When you look at all that combination, you see that we all have to learn from Israel and from the way Israel has mastered each of the stages and how it has been able to handle each of the steps to come to, if not yet collective immunization, at least something which is close to that. So there is lesson to be learned, and there is certainly a model to be followed. Yossi, you know personally extremely well, not only the country, but the startups, including the startups in the field of biotech. And maybe you can tell us what is making them successful and why we should find ways to partner with those startups.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Maurice, for being so kind. And indeed, I think that one of the most important manifestation of the time is how surprising needs which come all of the sudden induce creativity and resourcefulness. It's really amazing, as I say, that the rapid pace that people all over the world, not necessarily in Israel, came with solution to problems that we didn't know exist only a year ago. And this is one thing to learn. Regarding the reason why in Israel we are able to come with very quick solution, I think it's based on a number of things. Number one, there is an advantages to proximity. Israel is a small country. It's the size about of Silicon Valley, and all the players are on a small footprint. And we know very well that the interaction, the personal interaction, knowing who is doing what, feeling the commitment to help, being part of the same community, having the commitment for joint values, for joint commitments, is playing a very important role. So I think this is one of the things. The other thing you mentioned, we have really great scientific and academic resources. And while you are on the board of governor of Weizmann, which is very prestigious, I must protect my alma mater and mention the Technion, which I'm on the board of the Technion. And Maurice, you have to admit that the Technion is not less good than the Weizmann Institute. Not with your head like this, so I know if you agree. You have to. Good. Thank you very much.
If I have to spell it, yes, I agree, Ken. And to just give you an indication, I was 3 or 4 weeks ago at an event of the Technion in Paris, where there has been a lot of prestigious people speaking about what the Technion is bringing. So I recognize that it's not only the Technion, it's also the Tel Aviv University, the Jerusalem University, the educational system in Israel is absolutely incredible on many respects. And as I said at the beginning, when you were trying to fix your computer and the communication, and somebody has to tell you one day what internet means and how to fix those computers, etc., because I understand that for you, it's a little bit complicated.
See, I'm not as young as you. I'm an old man. You are a young man. You know how to deal with all these things.
Absolutely. I will not contradict you on that aspect. But you are my master and recognize you as a master. But more seriously, as I said at the beginning, the best investment a nation can do is in education. And Israel has understood that aspect very early on. And I must say, because I have a very vivid example in my family, one of my brothers have been in the army in Israel. At a point in time, after many years and having a lot of things on the shoulder, he started to learn a new profession. And all this has been done under IDF. And this is extraordinary as an example for how the country is thinking about the future of its people. And this has been something which I already felt it is one of the most impressive aspects of Israel is that when you are at the army, not only you serve, but you learn. And that is extremely important. Going back now to COVID and what happened, I think that one of the consequences that we are seeing every day is the care that not only the people are taking for themselves and how to care about themselves and their family, but everyone is caring about health, including corporations. And when I'm looking at what we, and not only ourselves, but our client, all the corporations around the world are caring about the health of their employees, is something which has been topping all priority. It's more important to care about the health of your employees today than to look at the sales. And for a CEO who would not take this as a number one priority, it would be a big mistake. And therefore, I think that what we see in this combination and meeting between startups, pharma, in this new world, it is something which will help solving that kind of problem. It's not only a problem in research, it is also in how you are handling some of the issues and what kind of tools do you have, what can you do in order to make sure that you are caring about the health of your employees, and at the same time, you are also getting the kind of productivity that you need. And for this, you have to go one step further than what we usually do. And I believe that that combination can be extremely interesting.
Maurice, thank you. Before we part, because I think we are about to exhaust our time, I'm very curious. I never missed any of the VivaTech shows other than this year because of the corona. And one of the major effect of the corona was on the hospitality industry, airlines, hotels, and conference and conventions. And conference and conventions are very important in the pollination of ideas. The conventions in my book are like the bees which move the pollen from flower to flower, and without the bees, you don't get any fruit because you don't get pollination. How did it work this year for VivaTech in face of the COVID?
First of all, I must say that I fully agree. And when I have been working on a report for the French government on intangible economy, one of the recommendations I made was to create an event which will crystallize the energy and will at the same time be a kind of lighthouse on all the innovation of the world. And this has given birth many years after to VivaTech. We missed you. We missed you because you are always coming with unconventional ideas, and also you are bringing with you some Israeli startups, having one of the most brightest conversation that we have at VivaTech. VivaTech went with some constraints. We had to limit the number of people on site to 5,000 at a point in time. So we had, on 4 days, we have been able to gather 26,000 people. And there are people who were coming and waiting, never have been able to enter. So it has been from that standpoint, a great, great success. We had obviously all the fences and all the barriers and the protection for health. We had more than 500 new innovation which have been presented, including a flying taxi, which is now commercialized in China. But a lot of other innovation, including the fact that you can make chips on paper. So the chips that you are having on your computer or that you are having on your cell phone is something that can be done on paper. And this is a researcher that has created that aspect in Bordeaux. And many, many, many other innovation. We had 114,000 paid visitors on digital, which led to 140,000 visitors in total. We reached 119 million people around the world, 148 countries exactly. And we had 1.7 billion impressions. So it has been something quite extraordinary. And there is an image that I like to use regarding the emotion and the emotional aspect. It was, I said, a little bit like a Jewish wedding, where you have people coming from all the part of the world to greet the newlyweds and participating to the ceremony and the festivities. And they were all hugging and or touching and saying, wow, long time no see. Long time, it was only 18 months, but close to 2 years, 2 years in fact. But it was like long time. It was like a past era, and we were in a new era where we can again have physical contact. We can again, you mentioned Ruth, Dr. Ruth, it was not that kind of physical contact, but at least there was the emotion.
I told you what is the definition of Jewish wedding. This is the meeting of two persons, one who doesn't remember any dates, like the wedding dates, and the one who doesn't forget any dates. So this is the definition. And last question, which is the most important, how the vintage of wine of French wine of 2021 is going to be?
I don't know. As we had a difficult spring with some moments where we had really very hot days and some very cold days, it will be probably better quality, but less production. So it will be a great year, but the best is that the vintage of 2021 for Publicis will be great. And that is probably the best thing to do. And as we were speaking about Israeli startups, today it is the first day of quotation of Taboola after merging with the SPAC at NASDAQ.
That's great news. Really, thank you very much, Maurice. Let's have very soon a gathering of French and Israeli to drink wine, and send some bottles to Yossi. I understand he likes the French wine.
No, we have a very
good.
Yes,
you should send.
I know there are good wines as well.
Pascal, you should send the case to Yossi. He deserves it.
I drink Israeli wine for patriotic reasons.
Okay, but sometimes it should be good also to pamper yourself with great wines.
That's great. Thank you.
Have a great conference.
Thank you very much, Maurice.
Enjoy the conference.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for your presence. Bye then. Now I turn on to Ayala. Ayala, are you here? Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Pascal. I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Ayala. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So, Ayala, can you, in few words, explain a little bit who you are? You have 10 seconds. You are not going to talk about wine, etc., but you are going to talk about what you are doing. So in 10 seconds, introduce yourself, and of course, a little bit more introducing Moovcare.
Sure. So I'm Ayala Bliah. I'm the CEO of Sivan Innovation and Sivan France. Sivan is a Franco-Israeli company. So we have two offices, one in Paris, one in France. And our product, our platform is called Moovcare. So Moovcare is the first digital therapy that is reimbursed in France. So it's prescribed by oncologists for patients with cancer, and the public health insurance pays for it.
Thank you. First question. So you know the Israeli landscape, you know the French landscape very well. So in your opinion, what are the main differences?
Okay, so first, very upfront, I will say that I'm not an expert of the Israeli markets. Okay, we are very French in the company, so for us also it's a discovery of the Israeli market. From my experience, I can see that the Israeli market is much more digital than the French one. In France, we are still a bit behind. Even though I must say that the fact that the government reimbursed a digital therapy is something that we didn't see anywhere else yet, and even not in Israel. So in this aspect, France really took the lead. But essentially, we can say that from doctors we had the opportunity to meet here and there, you face the same issues, the same problems. You have people with chronic disease, much more people with chronic disease. Also because the people are living much longer, you also have much more chronic disease, and chronic disease costs lots of money. Just in Europe, you have a cost of, for the treatment of cancer, it exceeds like 100 billion per year. And digital therapy is absolutely necessary and mandatory in my eyes in order also to decrease this cost. When you make the patients responsible for his health, when you detect some anomaly, some complication for patients with cancer on the spot, you can also react much quicker, and you can avoid increased complication, and you can decrease emergency hospitalization. So we do see like some very similar concerns both in the French and the Israeli markets. We also see that for doctors, it's not so easy to adopt digital tools. They are not used yet to this way of working. So in France, for example, we have sometimes some doctors who are scared of the legal responsibility, some doctors who are scared that it will be time consuming, and it's a real, it's our work really, and we really do it every day. We have to convince the doctors at the end of the day, digital therapy is not only good for the patients, it's also good for the doctor. It really helps them have a much more efficient way of working, optimize the medical visits. So just maybe to give in a couple words how Moovcare works. You have like a platform. It sends a questionnaire to patients on a weekly basis. And thanks to this follow-up, we have an algorithm that detects complication, relapses, and alerts the doctor if there is a problem. And then the doctor can intervene quicker, and the doctor can really follow the patient much better during the follow-up of the patient. We prove that it increases survival and quality of life for the patients. And but despite the fact that yes, there is like a improvement in survival, there is quality of life improvement, we also have to prove the doctors that it's really good for them, and it is indeed good for them because it helps them save time during the medical visits, not see the patient who don't need it, really focus more on the patient who need it. Also, we often talk about the anxiety of the patients, not so much about the anxiety of the doctors. And some doctors really tell us that to be able to monitor from far the patients all the time, it really reassures them because they don't really wait until there is something, a real problem, and it's too late to do anything in order to help the patient. So I think the need is really the same in both markets, and that a digital tool is absolutely essential today as a combination to a drug in order to improve the quality of life and the survival of the patients.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting, your view, especially about you know, the prevention of doctors, patients, etc., and the whole system, I would say. Yes, you have been the first digital therapeutics, let's say this way, reimbursed in France. There are some other countries now that are going to reimburse digital therapeutics, especially Germany, Belgium, the UK and the US. So these are potential markets for you, but it's good to have started with France, and we are very proud you have started with France. I have another question for from our audience. How do you collaborate with pharmaceutical and medical devices companies?
So we have a couple ways to collaborate with pharmaceutical company. First, obviously, we have the same clients. We resolve the same problems. We are concerned by the survival, the quality of life of the patients. For me, we are very complementary. We have, for example, a partnership with BMS, Bristol Myers Squibb in France, and it's a distribution co-promotion agreement. Pharmaceutical companies are really a natural distributor for medical devices. They have access to a large base of doctors. And for us, it's thanks to BMS, we really have increased awareness of the doctors about Moovcare. You know, when you are a small startup, you don't have so easy access to a huge base of doctors. So pharmaceutical companies, they have it. Also, on this side of the pharmaceutical company, it's a win-win situation. For them, they have sometimes some difficulty to go and see the doctors, and they need to have a reason. So we were really, we could see that thanks to Moovcare, you know, like you have something to introduce. It's also a reason to go back and see the doctors. Also, another way to collaborate and that you are working on at Sivan is co-development with pharmaceutical company. Digital therapy, you can consider two different types of digital therapy, and you are working on two different types of digital therapy. You have the digital therapy that are agnostic to the treatments, such as Moovcare Lung, that follows the patients independently of what treatment they take. But you also have digital therapies that are really a combination of the treatment, meaning that thanks to Moovcare, for example, you can detect earlier the toxicities associated with the treatment with the drugs of the pharmaceutical company. And what happened today, you have a pharmaceutical company, they give out to the patients the drugs, but they have no idea of what is the compliance, what is the side effects, what is the quality of life of the patient. And thanks to a tool like Moovcare, they can really increase the compliance. Like, for example, if you detect earlier side effects of a treatment, you can say, okay, I'm going to change the dosage of the drugs. Or you can say, okay, it's time to switch to a second line of treatments. So for pharmaceutical companies, such a tool, a companion, it's an application that really comes together with the drug, is super important. And last, I would say that the data is maybe the keyword for this type of partnership. At the end of the day, again, the pharmaceutical companies, they don't have real world data about the effect of their drugs. So quality of life, compliance, and we are really a possibility for them to collect a lot of data that can improve the outcomes of their medication.
Okay, I understand Moovcare is a very good digital companion for patients, for doctors, and it's also give very interesting insights to pharmaceutical companies. So everybody has interest to support this kind of digital therapeutics. So you are a Franco-Israeli company, so you have been developing the solution between the two countries with the help of doctors in France, etc. In the, I think it was the CHU in Caen, I guess.
In Le Mans.
In Le Mans, sorry. In Le Mans, which shows as well the dynamics in the French territories. What, in your opinion, is the secret sauce to succeed in France?
Well, I will tell our experience. For me, what we did well was not to take any shortcuts. We took, I would say, the longer road, meaning that we did some clinical studies for our device. It was much more expensive. It took much longer. But the fact that we had this clinical proofs, that we had publication in JAMA, GNCI, that we presented our results in ASCO, I think it really helped us in order to get the reimbursement, to get some notoriety, and also to be credible for the doctors. Again, the doctors, you know, like they know how to work, they are used of their way of working. And if you want them like to really trust you, clinical proof is essential. So I would say that it was one of our key secret sauce. Same for the certification, for the regulatory. It's very constraining, and you might think, okay, never mind, I'm not going to get this certification. It costs too much. It takes too long in order to get it. But we really decided to get all our certification, to be audited every year, even though it's a very heavy process on our R&D and so on. But I think it was the right solution. Maybe another secret sauce is to have the right partners and the right experts, to work with experts. The French market is very specific, and it's also a challenging market. So if you want to succeed in it, you need like to work with experts of the market, whether it's consultants, KOL, key opinion leader. We work with the Curie Institute from almost the beginning, and to be able to prove to the doctors that you have experts, like a leader in oncology that trust your product. I think it really makes the difference. I will say that the French market, but maybe it's like any other market, is very French. They like French, they don't like English. So if you want to go to France, better to speak French, better to have all your documents in French. Some doctors, even if they see one word in English, they don't, sometimes they just don't like it. So we have an office in Paris, and people who really are working directly with doctors in the field.
Okay, so I understand the secret sauce is not the wine, but the language.
The wine is good also, yes.
The wine is good as well. But the language is very important, and I understand also you wanted really to be compliant with the French and European regulation laws, and I think it's a very good way, because it gives you a ton of credibility. And the confidence of the whole ecosystem. So I think it was good, even if it is long and painful. But
yes, exactly.
Probably you have heard our French President Emmanuel Macron yesterday saying, "I swear you that in 2 years from now it will go much faster. There will be fast track with the HTA and the HAS." So maybe the next Moovcare application will be on the market a little bit earlier. So
yeah, I'm sure. We opened the way, and I'm sure that it will be easier, like for the next Moovcare that you are working on. Actually, we were happy that Emmanuel Macron spoke about Moovcare and Sivan also. So it's encouraging.
Okay, that's excellent. So if you have a very last word about Sivan, about Moovcare, sorry, about, I don't know, your future plan, as you mentioned, or a last recommendation to startups or to pharmaceutical company or to hospitals, what would you say?
Well,
you have 2 minutes.
Okay, as a Franco-Israeli company and a French-Israeli person, my ambition is really now to enter the Israeli market, to enable like also Israeli patients to benefit from this innovation, and to extend Moovcare to all other cancer indications. So far, it's only lung cancer who are using it. Tomorrow, all cancer patients will be able to benefit from it. And
what about other markets? I mean, European markets.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, because we didn't talk about the German market. We are submitting a file in Germany. We are a DIGA.
Of course.
So we will hopefully get the reimbursement by the end of this year. We also work in the US with Dr. Ethan Bash. So Dr. Ethan Bash is a kind of the father of this kind of digital therapy, patient-reported outcome. So we are doing with him clinical studies. And hopefully we will also be able to get a payment from Medicare for Moovcare.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ayala. It was a very, very interesting talk. Really great. It's I think it's good lessons to learn from for Israeli startups that are willing to enter the European market, but it's also very interesting for French companies and for pharmaceutical and the hospital. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon in France again. So come and visit us.
Thank you very much, Pascal, for having me, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayala. Thanks a lot. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Moshe Bar Siman Tov. Hi. Just put your microphone on.
I know. This is the first sentence in every Zoom session. You're on mute. So yes, hi, hello. Nice being here.
Nice meeting you, Moshe. Thank you very much. I know you're very busy, but it's very kind of you to visit us. In few words, can you please explain a little bit your what you have done so far for those who are not aware, especially your last application as Director General in the Health Ministry?
Okay, so until a year ago, it's been a year now, I served as the Director General of the Ministry of Health in Israel. And I served in this position for 5 years. So I was, it's any country, in every country it's a little bit different, structure, but it means to head the professional level of the ministry and working directly with, of course, with all the people at the ministry, but all the health organizations as well. And of course, with the minister and the political level. And during the first wave of the COVID in Israel, I led the professional response in Israel, and I worked closely with the previous Prime Minister Netanyahu, the response and the preparedness of the Israeli healthcare system to the pandemic. Before,
if I can add, Pascal, to the, can you hear me? If I can add just for a French audience, just to reinforce what Moshe is saying, basically the Israeli public saw you at this point every day on the screen, and you became synonymous with this first wave of Corona in Israel, and with the success of Israel at that point.
Yes, while I was there, it was like I'm in there, so I wasn't aware of exactly everything. But it was certainly the most intensive period of my life. Like, I mean, for many others, it's been like this as well. Before I came to the Ministry of Health, I spent 11 years at the budget department of Israel. It's the central budget and planning and budget unit of the government. It's in the Ministry of Finance in Israel, and I spent there 11 years. I was responsible for the social expenditure at the state budget. I was director deputy, and I was responsible for health, education, welfare, labor force. And this is how I came to know the Ministry of Health, because this unit is relatively highly involved in the day-to-day management of the healthcare system. In between, I spent a year in Washington, D.C. as the economic attaché, as the representative of the Ministry of Finance at the Israeli Embassy in the United States. And I hold a master's degree in economics and business administration from Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
Thank you. Moshe, so some questions we will ask together with Yaron. So first, during the COVID crisis, how you play with the public and private collaboration because you were at the head of the public force, but what about the collaboration with the private sector?
Well, there were many dimensions of private sectors that we collaborated with. I will put aside the health organizations that are within the day-to-day of the Israeli healthcare system. Some of them are private, some of them are public, but they are all organizations that we are dealing with on a daily basis. So I think that it wouldn't be wise to count them in. But we did collaborate with the private sector in Israel because, like any other country in the world, we had many needs that we couldn't meet while the pandemic hit us. It includes from masks to shields, and of course to ventilators as well. And the Israeli private sector came with several potential solutions. So we designated them to the right direction. I don't know how many remember, but at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a global shortage in ventilators. We didn't know back then how many of the hills we need to ventilate. We thought that about 90% of the acute hills we need to ventilate. Now we know that it's much lower percent. It's about 20 to 30%. But back then there was a national shortage, and it looks like we had a real need. So the private sector helped us as well, and some Israeli companies started to build ventilators for us. Some Israeli companies started to manufacture face masks because we didn't have enough for the medical staff, and of course not for the whole public. Now it looks like they are everywhere, but I believe that also in France and elsewhere there were not enough equipment for even not for the medical staff. And I think another dimension is private and quasi-private organizations or entities or people that came to help us both with the strategic thinking, what is the right strategic approach, but also data analytics of the pandemic. So some people came and offered their services. Most of them did it on a voluntarily basis, and their help was relatively crucial for us.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very interesting. So with the same spirit, what have been the major initiatives you could highlight, about collaboration between hospitals, big corporate company, and young startups? Have you been confronted to this kind of collaboration during your tenure in the health in the Ministry of Health?
Okay, so now we are talking about maybe the time before COVID.
Yeah, the time before and during COVID as well.
Pre-COVID era.
Yeah.
So looking at the digital health arena in Israel, it was one of our strategic efforts at the ministry due to several reasons. First, I personally believe, and I think that the COVID period proved it at least partially, that healthcare systems around the world are going to go through disruptive changes. I believe that the current model of both the deployment and the way that we supply the services of health is not sustainable if we see the future and even the current demand, the growing demand for health, and something is going to happen. I don't know exactly what, but it's sure going to be much more data-based services, personalized, precision, predictive, preventive, proactive, participative, choose your P. So it's gonna go in this direction. And we used to think about telemedicine and telehealth and things like that, but it's much deeper than that. And the other level is the way that we use data, both to run the system and to supply the services, using data analytics in order to create some decision support systems, for example, etc. Secondly, Israel stands, I believe, in the forefront of this of the health revolution in Israel because of. Oh, I see that now Sigal Regev just joined us. She could elaborate a little bit even more because I'm talking about, but she did it
afterwards. It's your turn.
So afterwards, okay. So hi Sigal. So I believe that Israel stands exactly in the right position to lead this revolution globally. You all, I guess, familiar with the quality of data that we have in Israel. We went to computerize our data about 20 or 30 years ago. And of course, the population in Israel, though tiny, is relatively highly diverse. So we have longitudinal and integrated data of diverse population for many years. The data in Israel is not just computerized, it's also integrated. And I think that this is one of the strengths points, not just of the data in Israel, but also of the healthcare system in Israel. This is one of the reasons why the Israeli healthcare system considered to be one of the most efficient and, if I may, also one of the best healthcare systems in the world. We saw it during the pandemic. So we believe that our role at the government was to remove obstacles from this revolution to happen, but to steer it from above and to encourage the collaboration between the health organizations and entrepreneurs, startups, researchers, etc. So we try to create like this sandbox for entrepreneurs to collaborate with the health organizations. If we have time, I could elaborate a little bit more, maybe later, about the PSIFAS, the Mosaic initiative in Israel. It's an initiative that aimed to create a data lake, but not just of medical data, but also of genomic and other layers of data as well. And this could be, again, crucial for every, not just a startup, but every corporate or company or researchers, etc. It's a gold mine that Israel could create for the Israeli industry and, again, for the global industry as well.
Okay.
Maybe I will ask a question, Pascal.
Yes, please.
I mean, could you elaborate a little bit more, Moshe, on those trends that you see, that you mentioned just a while ago on digital health, the way you see it going? I mean, we have at the audience here PharmaTech professionals from France, and they are they're facing similar challenges, but from a different perspective. And we are here basically to convince them that there's a lot to gain by collaborating. There's a lot of complementarities between the ecosystems. The French ecosystem is an ecosystem of big companies, big hospitals, which are also in the audience. Would be interesting to get your perspective. on this?
Why to collaborate with Israel?
Not only how to collaborate with Israel, but specifically what you mentioned before on those trends that you see on digital health. If you could go a little bit deeper.
Well, I don't know where to start, but I think that there are many points that you could start the discussions from. I think that data is changing every segment of the healthcare industry, services, etc. We see it in the way that we deliver the services directly to the patients. We see it in the community services. We see it, of course, in the hospitals as well, but we see it in the industry as well. I'm now working with one of the pharmaceutical, I believe, most promising pharmaceutical companies in Israel, that their approach is AI-based development of new therapeutics. And this is something that couldn't happen, I think, a decade ago. And again, I believe that we used to think about digital health as maybe an approach to deliver services from distance. But again, it's something that we do, but it's something that we already did 5 or 10 years ago. And I think it's important, but not that exciting. The more exciting things that happen is the way that we use data to supply the services. And again, it's not just the way that we manage the system. It's not that we have data so we can we can direct the system better. It's also developing AI-based decision support system in order to deliver the services directly. So in this phase, it's a decision support tools, but maybe later in the future, it would be even more than that. And again, I believe that the pandemic, the price that the humanity paid on the pandemic is, of course, very, very high. It's in a human life, it's an economic price, mental health, etc. But there was some positive and good things that happened during the pandemic. I think the main thing that I believe that happened is that there was like a leap forward in using digital tools in the healthcare system. I think that otherwise would take 10 or even more than 10 years of conservatism, both by the regulators, suppliers, and patients, were removed instantly because of the need. We know that the need is the mother of all invention and of all innovation. And again, in Israel, it happened naturally because the baseline was relatively very good. We had many digital companies, we had digital approach in the HMOs, and Sigal could elaborate a little bit about her case in Meuhedet. So there was, and of course we had the good data. So we were in the right position to utilize the changes that happen. And again, it puts us in a good position looking forward.
And the government is also very active in Israel in supporting this ecosystem. Not, I think, as far as I know, the Ministry of Health, but the Innovation Authority.
Yes.
And this is something which I understand is a deliberate policy to support the market and to use, basically, to encourage as much as possible this ecosystem and help it grow.
I think that there are about 6 agencies in the Israeli government, ministries that are involved. We believe that I was the director of the Ministry of Health, but my colleagues from the other agencies believed, like me, that it's also a growth engine for Israel. Israel, as a startup nation, as an innovation nation, as an ecosystem of innovation, is very strong in several fields, but we are not strong as we could be in the medical life science field. So we believe that if we collaborate all these agencies together, we could make it happen. And these agencies are, just like you said, it's like the Innovation Authority in Israel, the Digital Israel Authority, the Higher Education Council, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Science, and even some parts of the digital areas in the Israeli Defense Army as well, because they have capabilities as well, and they also supply medical services as well. So we were trying to create, as you said, the whole ecosystem of not just innovation, but putting barriers away. And for me, I'm talking not to an Israeli audience, but it's a good example how different agencies in Israel can collaborate. I believe that it's complicated, not just in Israel, but in any other country in the world, but it's a very good example of how different agencies can collaborate and put like the goal ahead and not just their organization.
Great. We will have a panel in about, I think, 45 minutes. We will have a panel with the Innovation Authority and with representatives from Teva and Merck who operate incubators in Israel. So it would be a good example for global players who are basically present in Israel from early stages in the development of startups.
And they could tell you about their collaboration with let's say the conservative health organizations in Israel. And this is something that I think 10 years ago, it was almost hard to imagine because the health organization in Israel were like, they are giants, like, I mean, in the Israeli scale, of course, not as big as the ones in France, but they were giants and they were, with the best quality of people they could get. And they used to think that they have everything that they need in order to create innovation. And I think that our contribution to the national effort was letting them understand with the right incentives that they could gain a lot from collaborating with this ecosystem, with these startups, and not just, okay, we will open our system in order to help you. And again, you have many players in this field that could elaborate more about it.
Right, it's coming up. Pascal, you wanted to ask something more?
Yeah, there is a question from the audience, Moshe, from Joanna. So the question is, could you give an example or some example of, on one side, the difficulty, on the other side, the success of this kind of collaboration or initiatives between, health hospitals, health establishments, startups, pharma companies, data companies, etc. So if you have some recall of success or failure.
I have many examples, but I don't want to insult anyone in Israel. So I think that there are, without naming anyone, but I did tell you that Ms. Regev, that we'll talk later, could tell you from her experience, both in the current HMO that she's worked now and the previous one. I think that we found that some organizations are more open to innovation and collaboration, and some are less. And we got, I think that we have the two examples, and I think that being honest, we have still a long way to go. I think that the obstacles are mainly, the discussions on our royalties and equity and what we do if we success. But I think that what we should do is let's do what we need to do in order to success and make the success big enough so everybody could enjoy from the fruits of the success. And not all the organizations are built to do it. And I was telling you earlier that we found that in some organizations, the culture was that they are strong enough and have enough good people and enough good talents in order to make innovation in-house. And I believe that no matter how big is your organization and how many great minds you have, if you have someone from the outside of your organization that's trying to make you think differently, it always has a great potential to contribute to your success. So these are the examples, again, without naming anyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Absolutely last question, and we have 1 minute left. So I would like to know, the French president just announced yesterday that he will put 7 billion euros in the healthcare system, and for healthcare industries as well. Is it something you would like to see also in Israel, this kind of, big amount of money? I think you have put, Israel has put a lot of money in healthcare system and the new technologies, etc. And maybe France is trying to close the gap. What do you think? Is it something you would like to see as well?
Of course, that we would like to see as well. I mean, I said earlier that the Israeli healthcare system considered to be one of the most efficient healthcare systems in the world. And of course, that there is a dark side to this efficiency. It's queues in people in the corridors, waiting times, etc. And again, some other people here could elaborate more. And talking about Israel, so Israel is aging like any other country in the world, but we do it, I think, relatively faster than many other countries. In this decade until 2030, the 75 or older population is going to double itself. And one of the unique characteristics of Israel is that the population in Israel is growing. I don't think that this is not a situation in any other Western or even Eastern country that I can think of. Until the end of this decade, the population in Israel will be 20 million more bigger than it is now, from 9 million to 11 million. And it's a great challenge as well. So we need to invest a lot of resources in order just to keep the right level of services. But of course that we want to get better services to the population. And this is all without mentioning our other needs that are not health. We got challenges in education, defense, of course, transportation, housing, like any other country in the world, maybe a little bit more because we are a younger country. We are just 72 years old. We are aging, but again, we are still young relatively. But I hope that now it's a new government. There is a new government in Israel, and in the next 2 or 3 months, there's going to be a new budget plan for Israel, and I do hope that something positive will happen in this direction.
Thank you very much, Moshe. It was very, very insightful, very brilliant. Thank you for this testimony. It was really, really helpful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Yaron, it's up to you with Sigal.
Yes. So we would like to welcome Sigal Regev Rosenberg. And I see her right here. Sigal, hello, shalom. Thank you for joining us. I'll just say briefly, I'll introduce Sigal briefly. So Sigal is the CEO of Meuhedet, as we say in Hebrew.
Meuhedet.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult in English, for the English audience, but it's Israel's third largest HMO, serving 1.2 million persons. An HMO, like Meuhedet, it's also termed sick fund, and it's essentially it's a special organization that dominates the Israeli healthcare landscape. And this unique organization gained a lot of attention recently with the success of Israel with the vaccines. Sigal herself, she has over 20 years experience at leading some of the largest complex healthcare organizations in Israel. She's the first woman to lead a large HMO in Israel. And again, welcome and thank you very much for joining us today. We are here in Paris. We have in the audience a few hundreds tech professionals from France, from the pharma companies, from hospitals in France. And we wanted to ask a couple of questions. And first of all, we wanted to ask you, how do you see the role of digital and innovation generally in addressing the challenges of COVID? And how did it, how did you prepare for it before the pandemic?
Thank you, Yaron, for having me. I want to be in Paris, but I'm in Tel Aviv. It's okay. Pandemic. So actually, we prepared ourselves a little bit before the pandemic. The Meuhedet strategy, one of the direction in the Meuhedet strategy is to get into the digital approach and to get it into the multi-channel strategy. And we were prepared. Few months before we were set up. We are okay with a new model. It's American model, a company of American Well. They are two Jewish brother doctors that had a company in Boston. And we bought the technology from them, and but in January and February we already only started, and we have only 50 doctors with the system, the digital system. And in 2 months after the pandemic started, all doctors was afraid to meet the patient, and the patient doesn't want to come. And it was a huge problem. So we took the all patient and put them into the digital platform, and it was great. And then we go to nutrition and psychological, and even the manager in the clinics were in the multi-channel, also digital and also chat and everything. It supported the community, the continuous of care. It supported, and it was okay, and people love it. They stay at home in the salon, in the bedroom, and talk with the doctor, visit the doctor, and the doctor gave them everything, and also all the drugs and the thing came to their home. It was a huge laboratory of
and this
digital.
Is before COVID. You're talking about before COVID.
It was before COVID, and then in the COVID we started accelerated. It was only we started, and when we started, it was really accelerated. And then we also in the COVID we built a huge control center to monitor the all patient with the corona patient and also the other patient, because we have a lot of patients that they didn't come to the clinics, and we had to see what's going with them, the diabetics one, the CHF one, the whole problem. So we built a great center of monitor. And in the peak day, we have 10,000 COVID patients at home, like hospital at home. And this model had to reduce 97% of the burden of hospital, because people was in the community, and the hospital maybe 2-3% only of the patients were in hospital. So we took the whole HMO, we took the patient, and we take care of them at home. And we built dashboards for all the management and all levels, so we know every patient what's going with them. And also the lab test operation, we put lab operation in every clinic, and also a near clinics location, 24/7, we took blood tests. And when the vaccination operation started, also 78% of our population is vaccinated now. Now, in this day, we've vaccinating the kids from 12 to 15. And it's the first week, so we have 31% of the kids. It's not so easy to bring the kids to the clinics now in this day, but I hope they will come. And the digital operation platform was great. And now in these days, we're thinking what to do with this platform and how to do really innovation, because the platform and only the visit is only the first cut. And if there is in the crowd some companies who want to build models that are hybrid, also at home and also in the clinics with their own physician, to bring new models on monitoring at home and observation at home, come to Israel and do it in Israel.
So, and everything is available online, right? This is something unique to Israel.
Yeah.
You can find everything you're doing is documented and available online.
Yeah.
And when you look now at what you did and what you want to do next, well, what are the lessons that you take from this to the future, to your future work plans?
Okay. So first of all, that we need tailored solution. It's not one size fits all. Also in digital, there is Orthodoxies, there is Arabs, there is a lot of kind of population that you need to see how you bring the innovation ideas and models to this patient. We also see the inequity between the all people, and it's a problem. We had also to solve it. How you address, how you take the innovation and get also not the strong one and the rich one population, and also to the poor and the diverse one. The importance of medical team, not only doctors with patients or nurses with patients, the medical team together, it's something that we saw that was very important. We saw the proactive ways when we were very proactive in this year, because people doesn't want to come to the clinic, so we had to manage the population, and we was very proactive. So the proactive way, the measures that we measure during the year was okay because of the proactive approach. The IT solution, the connectivities between, I don't know, the hospital, the emergency service, the government, there was a lack of connectivity. So we think that this approach was very needed in the pandemic. I think we in Israel, in the level of national perspective, we must have a vaccine factory in Israel, because we don't have, and we have a diversity of our supply chain source for medical equipment, and we were only with China in the beginning, so there is nothing that we have. So we started buying from a lot of companies, and until it came, it was a huge gap in the first 2 months. And also, I think we needed also a good plan, a good policy for a continuous pandemic, because it not was a pandemic for 1 month or 2 months. It was more than a year. And we weren't prepared also in the level of the HMO, and also in the level of the country.
Mm-hmm. And do you work directly with Israeli startups in the domain of digital health? Or let's say, are there opportunities that were unfolded for international collaboration between startup and healthcare organizations that you can see from your vantage point?
Yeah, in Israel we have 4 HMO. of all kind of perspective. We have more than 20 years BI, business information and medical information. We have a good data, and we are very organized. So I think the investment in healthcare will rise, especially after the pandemic, and people are reaching for more value and low cost, more value and low cost. This is I think everyone want to solve new models, and Israel is a very good lab for also pharma and hospitals and startup, and also Israel have a good collaboration between hospitals and HMO. So I think during the pandemic was a lot of the all HMO, the all startup kept to HMO, because in HMO you have the know-how, how they come with a good idea, but it's not a really good idea until you start using it and redesigning. Sometimes we redesign the all innovation startup idea, because it's nice, but it's not very effective or not very useful. So we like to do it, and I think the Israelis are very good in it. So if there is a startup here or a tech company, or I don't know, we are very happy to do something with our data and know-how and clinic and patient, and also the management. Come to Israel and let's do together. We have a lot of collaboration with the pharma and a lot of startup here. Every day we have visits and they sit with us and we give them everything they need to start the startup.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're trying to do here today. We have with us 15 digital health startups from Israel, and we invite our French audience to meet them. Right after this conference ends, in about an hour, we open the platform for meetings with these 15 companies.
Right.
And we will also have a panel to invite our French audience to think also about more active involvement in Israel in the format of, for example, of innovation laboratories, like the ones operating in Israel with companies like Merck, Teva, of course, Pfizer, and Roche. They are already in Israel, and of course, we have hundreds of global players already in Israel. We have laboratories, we have R&D centers. So this is exactly what we're trying to do here with the French ecosystem. We believe there's a lot of place to collaborate and to learn from each other. So that is the target.
So everybody is welcome to Israel and to come to Meuhedet and to do together very, very new thing and maybe innovative thing.
Wonderful. Sigal, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
It was very interesting to get this point of view of an HMO, an organization which is not really known in Europe, I think, very well, and got lots of attention recently. So thank you very much. I know you're very busy. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Yaron. Have a good day in Paris.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And Pascal, moving back to you, we have a very interesting panel now. Pascal? Right. We lost Pascal. Okay, so do we have Pascal online? All right, no Pascal. So maybe I'll start instead of Pascal. And
I'm here. No, just
that's it. Right, here you are.
Small issue. Sorry for that. Small issue with my my computer. So listen. Now it's time to go to the next panel. Then.
Exactly.
Okay, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, so it's good. Who's on the line from the panel? I see Gur.
Everyone is here.
I see Mati, I see Karina, and Noga. So excellent. Thank you, Yaron. So let me start this panel. So probably you know nobody of these people. So I will ask each of them to introduce themselves. As I told you during the preparation, you have 30 seconds to explain who you are and what you are doing, and then of course more time to explain what your organization is doing. So let's start with Karina. Hi, Karina.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. I think it's already now.
No, in the morning you can go.
Time flies when we're having fun. But thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure. Thank you, Yaron and Pascal and all the distinguished people here. So I'm Karina Rubinstein. I'm a business development manager in the Israel Innovation Authority. I've been practicing business development on international markets before I arrived to the authority. And in the authority, Israel Innovation Authority is actually the government agency which promotes the economy of Israel through investments in innovation over the years. And we have a budget of around €500 million. All of that goes to support the industry across the stages, across all verticals. Of course, a major part of our budget goes to support the life sciences, and this is a great concern of us. I'll say a few words maybe later on about our new strategy. So that's for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. So $500 million for investment. Okay, thank you. So let's go to Noga. Hi, Noga. How are you?
Thank you, Pascal. I'm fine. And hi, everybody. And thank you for inviting me also to present a little bit of what Merck is doing in the Israeli ecosystem. So I am part of M Ventures, who is the corporate VC arm of Merck. And I'm located here in Israel. And specifically in Israel, we see a lot of very early stage innovations. And therefore, we established 2 incubators here. And I oversee the incubators and the early stage investments in Israel. I'll tell you later.
Okay, thank you. So to make it clear, it's the German Merck, right? Not the MSD.
Merck KGaA.
Yeah. Okay.
This is our official.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've got also Matti on the line. Hi, Matti.
Hi. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. It's exciting to be able to join you, hopefully next time face-to-face. As you mentioned, my name is Matti. I've been at Teva Pharmaceuticals for a little over 10 years, and today is actually officially my last day. So this will be the last time I present as an employee of Teva, but as of tomorrow, I will be officially running the new innovation lab, which will be established in partnership with the Israeli government, the Israel Innovation Authority that Karina is representing here, together with 4 pharma partners, including Merck, that Noga represents, Teva, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, alongside AWS, Amazon Web Services, a venture capital fund called IBF, and operating with a model of where we will be applying a venture creation model applied from Germany of Bionetics Israel, here in Israel. So it's a pleasure to join you and look forward to the discussion.
Okay, good. So you can talk about your former job and about your next job. So it's good. It's very interesting.
Congratulations, Matti.
And finally, we have Gore, which is also a venture capital fund. So hi, Gore.
Thank you, Pascal, and thank you, everybody. Also excited to be here. So I am a partner at Amun, which is Israel's largest healthcare venture capital fund. We invest across healthcare, digital devices, drugs, and diagnostics, and we invest out of 2 separate funds. One of them is an early seed A-round fund, and the other one is a $750 million mid to late stage fund. You know, well, we invest globally. We do very much have a mandate to try and help build the healthcare vertical in here in Israel, but we also recognize that one of the important things that we can do is help bridge between Israel and the rest of the world, the innovation in Israel out and vice versa. So we very much look to help make those bridges.
Okay, thank you very much. And in addition, you offer us a very nice picture from Tel Aviv. So thank you very much. First question to all of you. You know, the collaboration between pharma companies, between the national authority and private funds is something that may be complicated because it's not very natural, I would say. So how does it work? You know, first of all, how does it work between different pharma companies that are not used to collaborate, but now it's more and more frequent? And how does it work with you know, the national authority and the private fund? Let's start with yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to you know, to mention the fact that we have a network of incubators and innovation lab in Israel of think of 30 now or so. The majority of them in the areas of health. We have been running that for a few decades already in all kinds of changing forms to adapt to the ecosystem here in Israel, but it's always a collaboration between us and the private market, and we co-invest together in these early stage ventures. We are a major, I would say, de-risker of private investors, and thereby we actually enable a kind of a platform to pharma companies and, you know, other companies as well, but pharma companies to have a first glance into these early stage open innovation projects with our major funding.
I'd actually add, if I could, I think that what Karina does at the Innovation Authority is one of the most important things that happens in Israel from the viewpoint of getting the startup nation really going, and I think works very well with the private side. One of the reasons that Amoon exists is because the Innovation Authority has done a phenomenal job of getting these companies started up, but then afterwards you need to have larger checks, you need to have a financial infrastructure in place to help these companies grow that deserve to move forward. And I think that the Innovation Authority is incredibly collaborative, and it's always a pleasure to work with them.
But do you, when you are going to invest, for instance, in a startup, are you looking carefully at what the Israeli authority is doing, or are you, or do you care about their advice, or don't you care?
Gor,
I don't think it's a question.
Maybe I'll add to your, you know, answer later on. A very fresh, recent, you know, thing that we've done together, I think.
Yeah. So first of all, it's not a question of caring about the advice. We appreciate the money, right? In many ways, what the Innovation Authority is doing is providing tremendous leverage. As Karina mentioned, it's providing an element of capital that helps de-risk. There are investors who like to invest very early stage, and there are investors who invest later stage. And for those investors who invest later stage, what the Innovation Authority is doing is providing the opportunity for those seeds to be planted, and then, you know, to help harvest them, we have the later stage funds. So, you know, oftentimes I think it's not the advice, although I think the advice can be helpful. It's the openness the Innovation Authority has to innovation that's really key.
I would just add to that, Pascal, if I may. We are a non-dilutive fund, as probably you're aware of, and for that matter, I mean, we are of course co-investing and co-sharing, and so on. But you know, the private market is doing what they're doing the best, and thereby they know how to grow companies and have them reach a very successful milestone.
Okay, thank you. Let's ask, yes, Noga, about the pharma companies.
So yes, the Merck is collaborating with the Israeli Innovation Authority on many levels, even on academic projects. And one really good example for that is a project that we started way long back, an investment in through the Israeli Innovation Authority in a project that started from the Hebrew University. It was an academic project. It later on was spun out as a company, and Merck continues to support it and invest in it until it actually acquired it. It was a company named Q-Lite, and now is part of the R&D of electronics in Israel of Merck. So it's really a success story that started from one of the projects that is called NOFAR. It's based on a grant that the Israeli Innovation Authority gives to the academia, backed by a pharma or industrial partner. And I think it was, proceeded to the best interest of everybody. So we collaborate on many levels, not just startups. Pascal, you're on mute.
What about, thank you, Noga. I said, what about Matti today in Teva and tomorrow in the Innovation Lab? What's your...
So sure, I'll give you two perspectives on that. So number one is, I think it's no secret that Teva went through some challenging periods financially, starting about 3.5, 4 years ago. And one of the things we realized we had to do at Teva in order to help the company build up its R&D program and stabilize its future was to reconnect with the Israeli innovation ecosystem and scientific ecosystem from the academic stage until later stage startups. And the Israel Innovation Authority is normally very focused on working with multinational companies to bring them to Israel and to enable their investments here in Israel. Well, we at Teva came to the Israel Innovation Authority and asked them, how about helping an Israeli multinational corporation that needs to help reconnect and strengthen its ties with the Israeli ecosystem? And we found an excellent partner to do that. It's very efficient in the way it works. It's not a normal government agency in that sense. So the public-private partnership could be very effective with a deep understanding of the pharma industry within the organization, with the business mindset as well. And we were able to reach, within 3 years, a whole series of collaborations, including the incubator Teva has invested in called Sanara Ventures, to realign our investment in Sanara Ventures to have a strategic approach in new technologies in the health tech sector, where it's a partnership between the Israel Innovation Authority, Teva, and a health tech company from Europe called Philips Healthcare, which I believe everyone knows. Additionally to that, to reach a whole series of academic collaborations, as Noga mentioned, through the different Moshe programs at all academic institutions throughout Israel, and supporting some internal R&D programs that we did at Teva. Some work, some don't, but as Gur mentioned, it's part of de-risking, which they offer to us, which is excellent. With the new program of our Innovation Lab, which Teva, Merck, again, and all the other partners are going to be there, we're going to be dealing there with the future of the pharma R&D industry. And that is where the Israeli Innovation Authority really shined in its strategy that I presume Karina will go into, to help bring multinationals to Israel by focusing the investments and the future of the pharma R&D industry, where artificial intelligence, machine learning, computational biology, and new technologies can help revolutionize the way that we develop and discover drugs and provide treatments to patients around the world. And in that case, the thinking is, if we really want to build up the industry here in Israel with a series of mid to large size growth companies, startups that can grow into be growth companies, the goal really needs to be focusing on the future of the industry and the places where Israel has special capabilities and talent and know-how, where Israel can be competitive at a global scale. And that is where the combination of AI, machine learning, computational biology can really play a role. And we saw that the global pharma companies, some that are invested in Israel, like Teva and Merck, but others that have not yet been deeply invested in R&D in Israel, like AstraZeneca and Pfizer, have answered the call the Israel Innovation Authority, because they put together such a smart strategy to leverage the capabilities that exist here in Israel in the fields of AI and computational biology, etc. And that's what we're going to focus on in the lab.
Thank you. So, but could you give some example of the major tech trends you've got in the PharmaTech industry? I mean, what are the trends you are seeing, you are overseeing right now? Would you? Why are you investing in these trends? Why are you? What are you trying to get from these trends? So starting with maybe Noga.
Sure. So as M Ventures and as an arm of Merck, we of course look at the ecosystem and what are the current trends, but more likely we tend to think about the value for Merck and for Merck business sectors when we reach out to the ecosystem and actively scout for novel innovations or look at what's out there. So our mandate is to invest in things that could bring value to Merck in the future. Things that Merck do not do currently in-house, but look at it as external innovation arm that could help either the pipeline grow or the continuous innovation fields in Merck. When we answered together with the additional pharma companies to the AI pharma tender, it was obvious that those tools are well needed in drug discovery and in clinical development, and indeed it's important to the additional pharmas that join forces with us. So it was obvious that those are there are real challenges for the pharma, that the tools that are currently exist do not suffice, and we want to be part of building the novel and future tools. And this is why we join forces together to build those platform companies to go ahead and build the future of the AI tools for pharmaceutical challenges.
Okay.
From that, we build our own companies also in other fields of our interest. I see a lot of things in Israel and worldwide in immuno-oncology. Of course, this is not a new trend, but an ongoing trend with a lot of competition right now. We are also seeing a trend in anti-aging and longevity kinds of research. Some of it is still academic, but we do see things that are built towards deciphering the underlying mechanism of aging and trying to solve this in order to answer multiple indications of health and pathologies.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Karina? What are the trends you see and you fund?
So I can say, that the Innovation Lab that Mati and Noga are part of, the new one, is the beginning of a whole trend that we are leading in the past 2 years or so, which when we look at the future of medicine, we do think that the big trend would be a convergence between engineering and biology. And this actually kind of intersection between those worlds. AI is one of them, of course, machine learning, but also 3D printing, also advanced materials, and other fields of engineering like physics and so on. All of them, when they are combined and they're actually provoking a kind of a multidisciplinary projects or startups, this would be actually the way that the world would tackle the challenges of health in the future. And so the government of Israel is having we're having a very kind of a large national program that we are in the verge of publishing now. And of course, a large part of this national program to promote the bioconvergence area, as we call it, would be the collaborations that we would like to promote on a global scale, also with other countries. And by far, the France is one of the leading countries that we would like to promote such collaborations with. I think the pharma scene in France is a very good potential for doing such collaboration. We can, promote through these kinds of collaboration the innovation from Israel with the innovation from France all together, combined with what Macron has announced yesterday on the Tuesday, was it? I think promoting startups is part of the agenda, as far as I noticed, and such collaborations are much needed. So from our side, at least, and our counterparts in France, we would like to promote that together and bring on board the farmers from France to have a tap into the Israeli ecosystem, as was mentioned, and I don't need to add any more to that. It was already discussed here before me.
Yes, that's a good point, by the way. Matti, you are working with with 4 multinational. So looking at an innovation lab in Israel, but how would you help your mother company or other subsidiaries in other countries like France to look at the Israeli startup flow?
So I think in Israel, first of all, from a culture perspective, everyone can reach everyone else within 1 or 2 phone calls. So the challenge isn't really how do you get visibility into the flow. It's how do you build the strategy that's going to be as focused and targeted as possible to meet the needs of, as you mentioned, the mother company or the shareholders that we have. And in this case, the challenge really is understanding what specifically they're looking for in as far as therapeutic areas, fields, types of technology, the needs and gaps that they have, and then putting together a very targeted and focused approach on how to address those gaps using and tapping into talent and technology that exists in Israel. And in that case, once you know what it is you're focused on and looking for, in Israel, it's very approachable. It's one of the best advantages in Israel that you can open any door relatively very easily, access and get meetings with different academic partners, potentially labs with researchers directly. Something that might take months to get a meeting in California can take you in Israel just a few days to set something up and to have a very intimate meeting. They're very open to collaboration. The ecosystem here is. They understand the value of meeting with investors and multinational firms with a very ambitious mindset of trying to help work and collaborate in order to help their technologies reach fruition and grow. So really, I think the absolute key is having a focused approach and very targeted strategy.
But do you think, Matti, that if your innovation lab with the four large pharmaceutical companies find let's say, very interesting, very promising startups here in Israel, do you think that this can be exported to other subsidiaries like in France or in the UK or in Germany? What do you think?
Sure. So maybe I'll just mention 3 things in that approach. First of all, is we spent as a group between the 4 pharma partners as well as our VC partner, Israel Biotech Fund, and together with Amazon Web Services, where we're really converging the capabilities between VCs, high tech, and computational capabilities, together with 4 different pharmas that each have their own strategies and focus. We spent about 1.5 years working together in order to really discuss very openly, build trust, and discuss very openly how we're going to work together and which areas we're going to focus on. Because to remind, there are also competitors. So we're going to have strict guidelines also that govern the way that we work together to ensure that we're adhering to all guidelines that are necessary, while trying to leverage our joint collaboration to be able to achieve something special. The second thing I'll mention is that the Israel Innovation Authority does have very attractive models of working, but also our goal is to build platform companies in Israel. So we're not going to export IP of companies. That's not a goal of what we're trying to do, but we will absolutely, and this is the third thing, build platform companies that as a startup that will grow independently will be able to work with customers and be attractive to work with customers, whether they're from amongst our partners, from Israel or from France and abroad, and we'll be very open to collaboration and happy to leave my contact information for anyone that wants to get in touch. We'll be very open for any type of collaboration that can help the industry here grow and our companies grow.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the point is taken. Gur, when you invest in a company here in Israel, I think what you are looking for is for them to become a scale up, and not only a startup in small Israel, but a scale up somewhere everywhere in the world. Is it true first, and how do you help?
First of all, it is very true. It's a very important point. Israel is a wonderful country, but in the end, it's kind of small. And to really get a return on investment, you need to address much larger markets. The typical market that many companies look to first is the United States, but there's no doubt that Europe represents a very important market. And in some sense, for Israel, France represents a very important market, because at the end of the day, we have a large number of binational French-Israeli citizens who speak French, and the market is available to them if the work is going to be done. So it's important how we add value. We add value in a few ways, hopefully, aside from providing capital, because presumably you can get that from other places also. We are a very, in ourselves, very multinational experienced group of investors. So everybody at the fund has had experience outside of Israel, United States, Europe, etc. That's the first thing. So we have many contacts. In fact, we're about 60 people in the group. That's about 20 investment professionals, about 15 back office. But the other group of 10 to 15 people are part of a group called Aymun Alpha, which is dedicated to the success of our portfolio companies that portfolio companies can reach out to in terms of business intelligence. We have a whole team dedicated to that. We have a team dedicated to finding talent worldwide, and there's a tremendous amount of talent available in France in the biotech sector. And in terms of creating connections between payers and providers, and in terms of scientists. So we're very much helping the companies in terms of creating those bridges to the markets. And finally, we are all, not all, but most of us have operating experience at companies and have helped grow companies, entrepreneurial experience, experience on the clinical side. I in the past was a CEO of a couple of biotech companies, an example, and it's bringing that experience. So that's really how we help our companies hopefully succeed. And finally, again, I guess with the connections, we also try very much when we invest, we do it from a syndicate point of view. We very much are interested in collaborators, especially strategic collaborators. One of the things that we've done in numerous of our investments are bring in other strategic companies on the pharma side to give access. I think one of the things that would be exciting for strategic partners here in Israel, they can certainly open their own incubators. I'm very much in favor of that to help build the ecosphere here. But also the truth of the matter is Aymun sees probably 95% of the biotech, the healthcare startups in Israel. And if you want to access, one way is to do that through us, because we do see a lot of stuff, and we're always happy to help make those connections. And in certain cases, we do co-investments. Our LPs can co-invest in our investments. So that would also be a way to access the ecosphere here.
Okay, so you will also leave your email address for our
yes.
audience. But a question I have is to all of you, but starting with you, Gur, for Ayala at the beginning of this meeting, Ayala told us that regulatory constraints are very difficult, especially in Europe. that business models are difficult to find. So for e-health, I would say startups, it's still digital therapeutics is still a little bit difficult. Now it's going to change in Germany, in Belgium, in the UK, maybe in France one day. So there are more and more money poured in this area. Do you fear about the company you finance to find the right business model, or do you feel confident with the business model in the future in Europe, for instance?
So first of all, it depends on the company, right? I would tell you that I have yet to meet the company where their business model survived contact with the market. Okay, things will always change. And truthfully, part of good investing is really having the best management you can, because they need to be flexible, nimble, and strategic. Okay, things are going to surprise them, and they need to be able to respond to that. It's one of the most important things. I know we talk about it as a mantra, good management, but it's really true. You have to have good management because things will change in the business plan. If we're investing in an early stage company, we may not have the right business model, right? And that's something that has to be figured out over time. And I think one of the best ways to figure that out sometimes is to find those partners, whether the strategics or even hospitals. Let me give you an example. One of our companies, MD Clone, works in synthetic data, right? Because there are a lot of privacy issues. HIPAA in the United States, GPDR, I think in Europe,
yes.
About privacy patient issues. And what they created was a way to take real healthcare data and create a synthetic database where the data is essentially the same from a statistical point of view, but none of the patients are real. So you can query the data, get an answer, but you don't have to worry about privacy because none of the information is real from an ethical or legal point of view, okay? Now, that was their original model. And they discovered that while that's an interesting concept, the problem that hospitals really have is that they can't actually get their own data. The data is siloed in multiple different systems. So they had to change their business model to not only doing the synthetic data, but actually going to the hospitals, getting the hospital systems to integrate and put their data into a data lake and all the various things about big data that you deal with, so that the synthetic data could actually be useful. And on top of that, they created a system where anybody could actually query the synthetic data at any time. So doctors, and I used to be an internist, and not just to put that out there, and I always had questions, right? Now people can get to the data in a real time, and you don't have to spend time going through legal and time going through the ethics committee and all this other stuff, because none of the data in the end is real, but the information that comes out of it, the insights are real because it's statistically the same.
Thank you, Karina. I ask you the same question about your confidence into business models of the startups.
You mean that it's always changing?
Yeah, of course.
I have to say, I mentioned before Gore, and we did something with Amon just recently, a company that spanned out of the academia, and it's such an early stage. The team itself is not stable yet. Who's talking about the business model at this stage? It's too early. I mean, you have a kind of a clue, at the beginning of it, but most times it would change. I think from our side, at least, we are trying to educate the startups to go and have a customer discovery journey before they approach us, and ask for our funding. So once they approach a potential customer, may it be HMO, as Sigal, was representing before, or all of the other healthcare organizations that we have in Israel and abroad, and they would indicate, that the business model should be this or that. They have a kind of at least an initial clue of what can be done. It probably would change several times going forward once the company is more mature, and I would say their offering is more mature, and that is changing also along the way. But once this reach a kind of a product market fit, then the model is more structured and more stable. I can say that the Corona year, and all of us are aware of it, it's not a new thing, brought up business models that weren't there for 20 and something years for whatever is related to what we call digital health. It used to be called something else back then. But there weren't no business model. You couldn't sell because the need wasn't there. So once the need is there, all of the rest is the line. But you have to be educated and reach customers right from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. And in a pharma company, I understand that you are investing on startups because they can bring direct value. Do you also try to invest in startups you see the value for longer term, not direct immediate value, but also much more longer term, even if the business model is not clear? What do you think, Noga?
Yeah, absolutely. So we invest very early too. Our portfolio is very diverse, but some of our investments are quite early. We do see value, imagining the value in the future is a little prophetic, but once we do see a potential value for the future for Merck, and we do the investment, the company with us as an investor is completely independent. It has its own board of decision, and decisions are made on the level of the board without Merck interfering in that. So the company could even decide to switch business model or change its course, and we will keep investing in it and keep supporting it as a financial VC. Because once we are engaged with the company and we get our feet and hands in the deal, we will take the full responsibility on how the company can grow and become to the best of its potential. Whether it's later on becomes part of Merck or Merck could benefit from that, I think the outcome is that 30% of our portfolio does some kind of business with Merck. So even without Merck having any prior rights in the companies, but the fact that we're engaged, we sit at the board level, we support the company, we can bring expertise from Merck if needed, we can support pilot or usability studies with Merck. All this contributes to long-term engagement and to the companies that later on wanting to work with Merck in the future, and the facts are that it happens.
Okay, thank you.
I want to add to Noga, Pascal, if I may. I think what Noga mentioned just now is so true and imperative. There needs to be a kind of a secured envelope or support to startups from in the early stages, specifically in these areas which are really long-term investments and take time to reach market. I think if they have the knowledge right from the beginning and the access to expertise and so on, the successfulness of these startups will be higher than going by themselves only and trying to jiggle, along this process of what could work and not and what cannot work. So we are trying from our side, at least, to give the full support through these kinds of innovation lab that Mati and Noga are invested in, where we find, over the time and years with our experience that the number of very successful startups that these incubators and innovation lab grow over the years have, it's a number by itself. It's proven to be successful. So I think that's most needed if you want to reach a very good ecosystem working at the end.
Okay, listen, I think we have gone through a very interesting roundtable. I have to really thank you all for your time and your very precious expertise. It has been very, very interesting to learn from the Israeli ecosystem, and this final roundtable showed us the some very passionate insight. Really, thank you very much. Again, Karina, Noga, Gur, and Mati. We wish you great successes. I want to, before giving the final word to my friend Yaron, I would like to remind all the audience that this afternoon there will be a pitch session of all the 15 Israeli startups that are participating to our Meet PharmaTech. Those who are interested, come over, and if you need to have some information about it, just ask us. It has been a great morning. I personally learned a lot. Yaron, you know everything already, but I think you learned also.
No, I know everything already. It's not kidding. It was very interesting. Yeah, I must say that what is interesting for me is that there are significant differences between the ecosystem, the French and the Israeli, and it's really different angles of view. I mean, the French ecosystem has a corporate mindset, a big corporate mindset. The Israeli is, of course, completely different. It's all bottom up, and it's in my view, it's completely complementary. I mean, there's a real need for Israeli startups to understand, to build their own market model. It's non-existent in Israel without collaborating with big players, and it's our task in recent years to persuade Israeli startups to look at Europe, at France particularly, and not only on the US. And I think it's growing, but it takes some work. I mean, it's a different culture. It's a different mindset, a different business mindset, and it takes an investment. That's how we see it usually.
Okay, so tomorrow this afternoon, 2:00 French time, we have this pitch contest, pitch session with today. Sorry, I said tomorrow, so today. Sorry. Today we have today on Wednesday, June the 30th, we have this pitch session at 2:00. So come over and listen to the Israeli startups. You can ask a lot of questions. We will give you some more information on the chat, and also there will be specific session tomorrow with the Toulouse Hospital. With the startup, Israeli startup. So Toulouse Hospital will conduct a specific session. There will be in July a specific session also with Sanofi. So again, thank you very much to all the startups that play the game. Yaron, really, thank you very much for building this event, a very fantastic event together.
Thank you, Pascal, to you.
It has been a great pleasure. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Ayala. Thank you to Karina. Thank you to Noga. Thank you to Mati, to Gur, to Moshe Bar Siman Tov, to our two introductory people with Maurice and Yossi. Thank you to Sigal. Yeah. It has been fantastic. Thank you very much. And a special thanks to the Digital Pharma Lab team as well, and Damien, who conducted the video flow without any problem. So thanks a lot. See you soon. We hope that the COVID will be over, so come and visit France. we will go and visit Israel, and in the meantime, enjoy the day.
Hopefully it's not raining in Paris now.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.